Check. 1, 2, 3.
The D.
Brief.
Yeah. This is the D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit.
Your guide to Detroit's
arts and entertainment scene.
This is the D
Brief.
Hello and welcome to the Debrief. I am your co-host. My name is Seth Ressler. Actually, today I am your only host because Mike Jeter and Becky Scarcello both are off on vacation. They said something about a giant bunny laying eggs. I didn't really understand the whole thing, but anyway, they're not here, so I'm going to take this opportunity to go back and play pieces of some of our favorite interviews from earlier this year, starting with Ann Delisi, the host of Essential Music on WDET here in Detroit, and she stopped by the studio to talk music with us. Here's a little bit of that conversation. You know, we talked about Jack White and Kid Rock and some of these guys. I mean, talk about how the music scene has evolved since you've been here in Detroit.
I've been in Detroit my whole life. You know, Detroit is known around the world for more than Motown. And I'll go back just for a real quick second. There was a legendary record store in Detroit called Sam's Jams.
Yeah.
You remember Sam's Jams, right?
Yes,
so I worked at the original store, and then when we moved, and when I was at Sam's Jams, I was talking to somebody about this. I was talking to Ben Blackwell, as a matter of fact, about this the other day. And I remember working on I remember it like it was yesterday, and I've forgotten a lot of stuff, but a bunch of Japanese businessmen walked into Sam's Jams, and they went right to the rare Motown collection we had, because we would collect, you know, for people that were collectors. It was all vinyl at the time. They bought every single thing we had. I mean, every piece of rare Motown vinyl we had. They just cleaned the place out. And it hit me because I thought, you know, this music is so revered around the world. And Detroit, it's synonymous with Detroit, of course, but so is techno music, and the fact that it was born here. And actually, it still, in my opinion, remains bigger around the world than it does here in Detroit, although movement does prove, you know, each year that the following is incredible in Detroit as well. But for the longest time, all of those guys, Carl Craig, Juan Atkins, Derek May, and Kevin Saunderson, you know, they were known around the world. They were of godlike status when it came to techno music. So it's been incredible to watch that form continue to grow. And then, you know, we are at a point now where we have watched rock and roll and all of its offshoots kind of like grow up. So the people that invented rock and roll, for all intents and purposes, have lived their entire lives. We've watched their careers, their entire lives. You know, unfortunately, we're starting to lose a lot of these incredible artists. But Detroit has just continued when it comes to, you know, you watch the White Stripes and the influence that they've had, and the fact that Jack White still spends time here and invests in this community, I think is really quite impressive. And so music of all different genres still live and breathe in this town in such a big way. This town is driven in many ways by its music.
Do you see small record labels in Detroit, or do you see, you know, interesting little projects like that? Oh, yeah. One label in particular was started by Jarrett Coral, who was 16 at the time, and he just celebrated his 5-year anniversary with his own label called Jet Plastic Recordings. And it's the first time he can drink, I guess. Yeah, you guys should definitely interview him, because everybody knows who he is, and he started this label by himself, and now he's got all of these releases coming out, and he's just, you know, well, he speaks to the entrepreneurial spirit. There's no doubt about it. Right. But also that feeling like when you're a kid, like you can do when you could do anything, and you've got the energy to do it as well. And he is somebody that is really great to watch. And you know, you should also, I can tell you how to program your show. Here I go. I'm producing your show. I apologize. It's
you have experience.
It's very impolite.
We're more than happy to take suggestions.
It's very impolite.
Write this down.
Yeah, I got it.
But Archer Pressing Plant, you know, they were pressing vinyl the entire way along. Now they're backed up beyond belief. You know, they can't even keep up. And Jarrett Coral got a lot of those records pressed there. And of course, now you've got Third Man, who is pressing vinyl like crazy. And the other thing that they're doing at Third Man, obviously a much bigger label, but they are, being really active about going to a lot of these bands in Detroit who played at the clubs for many, many years and getting those recordings to basically archive them so that this musical history of Detroit is preserved. So it's just it's always been an exciting town for music. And on a national level, record companies used to come to Detroit because they knew they could break their artists here. They would bypass New York and Los Angeles, which is where everybody would think they would do it, and they could come to Detroit and break their artists. And that was an exciting thing for me as a music director, not just to be on the air, but as a music director. It was incredibly exciting because they would bring all these new artists and do showcases here.
And I can say this,
great.
I was a music director too, and there's nothing better than to be able to say, I broke a band, meaning that, I played it first or was one of the early ones, and to be a champion on a record, and then to see that band go on to be a big deal.
No question about it. And that happened in Detroit a lot, whether it was rock or AAA or modern rock or whatever. That would happen routinely because they knew that Detroit would take chances on artists. And at one point, we had 4 rock stations here.
This is a rock. They don't call it Detroit Rock City for nothing.
Oh, no,
this is a rock town, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Everybody's kind of got it in their DNA. You have rock music, but you've also got, this soulful Motown that's in our DNA as well. But at that time in radio, it was so exciting to work in radio because the competition was so fierce, and competition is great for the listener.
Yeah.
It makes everybody better when you are all really duking it out there.
Right.
I miss old-fashioned radio wars.
Yes.
LOZ and RIF.
And what were some of the things that you saw in the trenches when there were radio wars? Did you have these battles over concerts, like when a band came to town or stuff like that?
I would, from the distance, I would see the rock stations go through it, and it was hilarious to watch because they were serious about it. And they were all going after the same listeners. At the River was sort of a step aside from WDET. So at WDET, I could play anything. I could play Miles Davis next to The Clash, next to, Bluegrass with Bill Monroe, and I could totally get away with it. When I went to The River, of course, it was not quite that crazy. But still, we were one of the stations in town that would break all these artists. And the thing that would upset us sometimes was we would take all the chances to lay the groundwork for an artist. And then it would feel safe, quote unquote safe, for other stations to play this artist, and then they would get them to play, their giant show when we did sort of laid all the foundation
I've been
for that
there
kind
too.
of stuff. You know how that goes.
Yes, that's
You're like, excuse me.
Right. Or when the band crosses pop, like to the top 40 station that started on, the cool station in town. Yeah.
Well, hold on.
But I miss all of that.
You've been around so many genres of music.
Yeah.
What is your favorite type of music to listen to? You have to have a favorite, right?
Well, the crazy thing is I studied classical in college, so I got my degree in music. And I am a perfect case of people who are not great musicians become disc jockeys. I'm a classic case. I did okay in school, and I'm, now looking back, it was a luxury to go and study music. And I probably have a different vantage point when I'm talking to people about it because I studied it so much. But there's something about all of it that I really love. When I hear an incredible bluegrass player, I'm still blown away. But when I hear a great rock guitarist or an incredible vocalist, no matter what they're singing, I still really love it. And so, I've been out there to see AC/DC, and I've been there to see Miles Davis, and I love it all. I really do love it all. But I probably love, if I had to pick a vocalist, it would probably be Marvin Gaye.
Ooh, so I like that choice.
Yeah, so if you said to me, what's your favorite, if I had to name one, he would epitomize for me. It's not just how incredible of a singer he was, but the timelessness of his voice, that it still resonates today, that you could listen to a Marvin Gaye song and not say, oh, this sounds so 60s or whatever. It doesn't matter. and that he really took a lot of chances. You know, when he recorded I Heard It Through the Grapevine, Berry Gordy refused to release it because he hated it. And Marvin Gaye sang in a falsetto through that whole song. If you'll listen to it differently now, of course, he sang in a falsetto through that entire song, and he wouldn't release it. So that song was recorded 3 times. It was recorded by Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. It was recorded by, then it was recorded by Marvin Gaye, not released. Then Gladys Knight recorded it, and she had a huge hit with it. And it was a disc jockey, and I can't remember the name of I can't remember the station call letters, that took Marvin Gaye's I Heard It Through the Grapevine and started playing it, and forced Berry Gordy's hand.
Wow.
Because everybody heard it, listened to it, and of course it was a million seller and one of the most enduring songs ever recorded.
Yeah, there's a video on YouTube of just his vocals for that.
I've heard
that
it, yeah.
is scary. It's scary how incredible it is, because you hear the echoes of it and all that. And it's not cleaned up at all. It's beautiful, and it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, I can see why this is a hit. You know, it wouldn't be like me singing it. You know.
What about more recent stuff? Do you have any favorite albums from last year, or else albums that you're looking forward to in 2018?
Please don't say Rihanna.
Here is the band for you guys to watch, and I love them. And they are called The War and Treaty. And I started playing them, I guess maybe it's been over a year now. And they are a husband-wife duo. And together they sound so incredibly stunning. And so here's what I'll tell you a quick story. You got time for a quick story?
Yeah, sure.
I'm loaded with them. All right, so this is a quick story about them. So I hear the song and I'm like, oh my gosh, who are these people? Well, turns out they live in Albion, Michigan. They had moved there. You know who they are, right?
Yes.
And so I started playing them on the air, and I get a message via Twitter from Tanya Trotter. She's the female vocalist. She says, oh my gosh, thank you for playing our song. I said, I really love you guys. Can you come in and do a performance? And so they blow everybody away. They are incredible. And their story is that Tanya was signed to a $2 million record deal that she walked away from. She walked into Puff Daddy. Is that what he calls himself now? Puff Daddy.
P. Diddy, Puff Daddy,
P. Diddy, whatever. Okay, she walks into his office and says, I can't sing this stuff that you want me to sing. I want out of my deal. And he lets her out of her deal. Meanwhile, Michael Trotter decides to enlist in the Army, thinking they basically said, you're not going to get deployed, right? So he finishes his training, he gets deployed to Iraq. So Michael gets over there. He has never been around white people his whole life. And so his commander is a white guy. And Michael was having a hard time. So they're in Iraq. He wasn't expecting to go. And this commander said to him, I think you should go and play this piano. And there was a piano in the basement of one of Saddam Hussein's palaces, and it was the only thing not destroyed. This entire palace was destroyed. The only thing not destroyed was this piano. So Michael Trotter would go and learn how to play and write songs and sing on this piano that belonged to Saddam Hussein. His commander gets killed. He writes a song for him to sing at the memorial. It is so beautiful. This man's voice is so incredible. And he then, throughout the rest of his military career, goes to all of these memorial services and sings for all of these fallen soldiers.
Wow.
He comes back to the United States, and he's singing outside somewhere, and Tanya is across this field and hears his voice. And as she describes it, she's in her heels trying to get to the stage where this man is singing, and says to him, you and I should be singing together. So they start singing together, then get married. And so fast forward to I hear their song. Then I work with Don Was and Ishmael Ahmed on the Concert of Colors, which is such an incredible, one of the best events Detroit does to celebrate music diversity from around the world. So I'm on a conference call with Don and Ishmael, and we're like, what bands should we get? And this was to celebrate 1967, so they were Songs of Rebellion. And I said, you should watch this video, The War and Treaty. And the first thing Don said to me on the call was, get The War and Treaty. I said, okay, so call these guys up. And at this point, by the way, they had no manager. I was like one of the people that they would ask questions to. I'd say, well, I wouldn't do that, and I would do that, and I wouldn't do that. And they said to me at one point, can you be our manager? And I said, you know what? I'm only willing to screw up a career. That'd be mine. I'm not going to be responsible. And I have so much respect for them. So anyway, comes time for the Concert of Colors rehearsals, right? And that happens in the basement in this auditorium at the Arab American Museum. In comes Michael and Tanya. And now the only people, like there's no audience there. There's like a handful of people in the audience, and then there's the band that they're going to perform with. And so they walk in, and I know the band is going, what is up with these two? You know, they just didn't know what to make of them. And their song was Respect Yourself by the Staples Singers, which was a brilliant choice. And they get up there, and you can see the band. Now, all of these guys in this band are seasoned musicians. They work with Don Was. Don Was knew what they sounded like, and they're up there, and they blow everybody away to the point where people are coming up to me going, where did you find these guys, you know? So am I running long here? No. Okay, good. So fast forward to the night of the performance, and they were second from last. So everybody had performed except one artist. And, you know, after the rehearsal, Tanya said to me, you know, she told me she was nervous, which I couldn't imagine because she's got the voice from heaven. And I just said, Tanya, everybody in that audience is going to want you to do your best and sound amazing, and they're going to cheer you on. So just go for it. Have fun out there. You and Michael are incredible, you know. She goes, okay. So they come out there and they sing Respect Yourself. And something happened that nobody expected is that every person in that audience was on their feet screaming for them. Wow. And for like a full minute, because I went out there because I'm supposed to interview them. And I'm like, oh, I'm way too early here. Nobody needs me. And people were blown away by them. So they were so emotional. They couldn't believe this outpouring. And that night started to change everything. And before you edit this piece, I think they will have a major label deal. You are going to see them on the late night shows before too long. I am almost certain of it. And I can't say what label. I think I know which one they're going to end up going to, but they're going to be on a major label. And they are already going to be they're on Bonnaroo and Coachella and all that. They're booked at all these different things.
And that's the greatest feeling for somebody in your position, isn't it? To be there early and to see a band and to believe in a band and then watch them go on to do great things.
It is. And you know that feeling too. And the thing is, I just wish them nothing but the success because their talent is immense. They are enormously talented. And it's kind of like when you hear a band or you experience music that is undeniable, even if it's not your favorite kind of music. Right. There are artists that you can't deny their talent, and that's where the War and Treaty fall. And the two of them, independently, they could be successful solo artists. There's no doubt about it. But together, it is really mind-blowing. And so this is going to be something to watch. And I'm thoroughly enjoying watching their star rise the way it has.
Oh, well, that's awesome.
It's great, yeah.
Nice.
War and Treaty. We'll go check it out.
I mean, I stumbled across them a few weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in one of their songs, and I was like, I can get with this.
Nice.
So.
Oh, yeah. They're amazing.
Well, Ann Delisi, thank you so much for taking
my pleasure.
By. This is fantastic.
Awesome.
Absolutely my pleasure.
Debrief.
Want more? Text the word Detroit to the number 444-999.
All right, Mike, we're getting pretty good at this podcasting game.
I think we're all right.
Yeah, we're all right.
We're all right.
We could stand to have some lessons, I think.
I think so.
I think we should bring in some experts.
It doesn't hurt, man.
Some people who really know what they're doing. And we've got three actually here with us today. We've got Jay and Mike Walters from the Detroit cast, and they brought Big E as well.
Yeah.
Guys, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, our pleasure to
be here.
Now, this is our, what do we say, 14th? 14th
We're
episode.
just rifling through these things,
Yeah,
right?
right. So we think we're doing pretty
Breakneck.
well. And then I saw that you guys are about to release your 1,000th.
Yeah, we're
1,000.
right on the cusp.
Yeah. And then we heard, wop, wop. It's like, oh, no.
Yeah.
But we're going 5 days a week. So.
You are. I mean, you guys are full-time podcasters here in Detroit.
And we have been for a few years now. So
So what's the story? How did you guys get started? Because I know that you're a radio guy.
I am a radio guy. I was a producer for the Drew and Mike show. On people will know from WRAF for many, many years, all the way through their final show. And
that was a legendary show here in Detroit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big,
it
big
was
deal.
It was, but I saw right away. I saw a few years back. Podcasting is where this industry's going. You could just feel it. You could see some guys kind of breaking out. And I had the last year before we were, fired. I started building a studio in my house. And I thought all along, well, I'll just keep doing the Drew and Mike show, and I'll on the weekends do some podcasting and try to, do something. And then we were fired, and then it became decision time. Do you want to go and stay in mainstream radio, terrestrial radio, or try and do this new medium and see where it can go? And I made the really tough decision of, you know what, I'm just going to stick with podcasting and see where this goes. But there was no one else there. There was no one. It was just me. There was no money. There was no sponsors. There was no listeners. There's nothing.
I mean, even now, it's
Yeah.
growing. More people know what podcasting is, but there are not a lot of guys who are able to, especially going out and doing it on their own.
yeah, we're lone wolfing it. We're
Yeah.
not linked
Yeah.
up with some umbrella.
No, right.
Well, I called Eric Big E here, who was working on the west side of the state, living and he was doing some radio over there. And I was like, E, why don't you come back? And he would come back a few days a week and hang with me. And I was like, I got to get Big E involved. And I kept thinking about my buddy Jay. I was thinking, wow, do I try to find a comedian to come in here and co-host with me? And I kept thinking about my buddy Jay, who I went to high school with. But Jay was an attorney and a successful one. He was working at a big firm in Birmingham.
Yeah, I'm just imagining the paycheck, attorney, podcaster.
But here's the key. I would, Jay and I would hook up and do lunch like once a year. And I knew he was miserable. I knew he hated it.
Miserable doing law?
Yeah, right. Stacks of paper just reading, And so anyway, I called him, and it turned out he quit his job like 3 days earlier.
Oh, wow.
And so I was
It's
like,
very
dude,
serendipitous.
Yeah, I mean,
man.
it just kind of, and I was like, dude, I think you'd be good at this.
Was it a big dramatic quitting? Was it like you walked in, you're like,
stormed in.
screw this job, I'm out of
Yeah, I
here.
grabbed the goldfish and left. No, it was a long time coming. I was in the business for about 16 or 17 years, and I hate to generalize, but I think there's a sliver of lawyers who are born to do it. I think they love what they do, and they do it from the day they're born to the day they die. But I think, gun to most lawyers' heads, probably 85% of them, honestly, if they had a way out, they'd probably take a way out if they had some sort of safety net and could escape this thing. So I was kind of looking for a period of years and just kind of hitting my head up against the wall, and I ended up just going, you know what, I'm going to quit and then just see what comes about. And if I end up mowing lawns or whatever.
If you guys knew this guy like I do, the idea that a married Jay with kids would just quit and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
That is so
I have
foreign.
a very supportive wife. I have 3 kids and a wife.
Wow.
And it was very risky, but I just thought, you know what? This is not where I'm supposed to be. And so I quit, and like Mike said, 3 days later, come try this. I'm like, okay, why not? Even at that point, I'm like, all right, I'll just go have fun for a minute and do this. I didn't envision
So
at
something
all.
broke out, and now this is...
Well, we started looking at it after a couple of weeks and after a few shows, and I know I sucked at the beginning. I mean, it's this is way harder than it looks in terms of you guys getting on mics and doing this. And I know I was bad at first, but I felt like, man, there's something here, and he, like he said, it wasn't monetized at the time, but we knew there was potential.
Yeah, and the thing was, I had Mike Clark was over for the first few episodes from Drew and Mike, and so I knew whoever sat in that seat next better be confident in themselves. They didn't have to be great, but they had to at least believe in themselves. And I knew Jay didn't care what you thought about him. Jay was Jay, and I knew he was funny, and I knew we probably had about 3 shows where it was like, just hang with me for 3 shows. Trust that I know I'm picking the right guy. Give him a chance. and the audience did. And Jay came in and delivered like I knew he would, and it's only grown from there. And it's been awesome. It's been hard. It's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of stress.
Yeah.
But it's been a lot of fun.
What, did you bring an audience over from Drew and Mike from radio? Did they follow you?
I brought some audience, which sounds good on paper, but the fact is, if you don't do a good show, people don't care where you came from. Like you better entertain them. They might give you a day or two, but they won't be there for long.
Right.
And they gave us a chance. And with Eric, who's completely different from all of us, it sort of worked and took off enough that some sponsors called us and was like, what does it cost? And Jay and I are like,
grab the dartboard, throw a dart.
We literally
billion. We just
throwing a dart at that. That's so true. We were literally like, I don't know, dude. I don't know. What does it cost a minute to, for 30 seconds on our show?
No, we had some guidance from radio contacts.
Yeah.
And we sort of loosely went from that. But backing up, we did a Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign, and that gave us confidence that we had an active audience, a leaned-in audience that would help us. And it also gave us quite a chunk of change to start out with, which got us through some tough times and allowed us to start. So.
Well, what did we I think we had our campaign, what was it, 20 grand?
It's 20 grand. You have 30 days to hit 20 grand. If you don't, all the money goes back to the donors. And we hit 20 grand in 9 days. And so then we started having fun with it. Once you go above, it's like, all right, if you can get us to 25, we'll do this.
Right.
And you hang out these carrots, and it's so much fun to do that. And we've done that since then with charities. Big E does a lot of charity work for South Oakland Shelter here.
Okay.
And we've done the same thing, just trying to get listeners, and we made 60 grand that way for charity.
Oh, wow.
But that's a different issue. But going back to the Kickstarter, we were doing these things, and one of them, man, this is one that really cemented me on this show, I think, is I think we're at about 40, and we're like, hey, if you can get us to 45, Jay will call his in-laws and tell him he quit the firm and he's doing a podcast.
Keep in mind, guys, he'd been quit from the firm for 6 months and had not told his family he
I hadn't
quit.
told my in-laws.
Bruh.
So I had to call my father-in-law, man.
Live on the air.
How did that go?
Right?
God bless him. He's a great guy. He's super nice and took it well. But you could tell he was worried.
And I did my part as a good friend and partner to Jay to needle him the whole time, letting his father-in-law know, no, we're in my basement. Fingers crossed this will work out. But hopefully it works.
See how it goes.
Who knows?
You guys didn't FaceTime him, so you didn't see him clutching his chest.
Oh my God!
It was uncomfortable, but it was great.
So for people who aren't familiar with the show, I mean, how do you describe it? What happens on the show?
We talk a lot about our past, our growing up together. We cover a lot of news. We cover politics, sports, anything really that we've got an opinion on. We're not afraid to go into any topic, even if we don't. We're not afraid to go. I don't know much about it, but let's do it. And it's definitely. The language is harsher on our show than it is on the debrief. That's for sure.
Adult content. It's just real talk.
Mike,
and I appreciate that. As a comedian, I like real talk.
Yeah.
Mike has sensitive ears.
I do. Very sensitive.
But it's fun. Nothing's off limits.
Right. And we book interviews. We just try to keep it fresh. Big E brings a freshness to it. Mike and I disagree about a lot of things. We come from, he's a bachelor.
Yeah.
He has much different views than I do as, a married guy with 3 kids. Big E, as a guy living in his parents' basement, doing comedy on the side, has a much different view. So we're always challenging each other and sometimes getting in some pretty heated arguments, but it's all fun.
It's been difficult. When we say difficult at times, it's that. And when I thought about like who to bring in, it's easy to just go, oh, this guy agrees with me on everything, I'll bring him in.
Right.
But I knew that wasn't the best way to do it.
Yeah, that's the worst.
Yeah, it was like, you know what? I need someone to challenge. You need someone to challenge you, and I knew Jay would. I knew Jay wouldn't. He didn't. He was going to have his point on things, and that's made it difficult for us. I mean, if listeners knew what went on behind the scenes with the show, I mean, Jay and I can get in screaming matches at each other off the air.
Well, now we got to know, what's the biggest fight you guys ever had?
Well, it's mainly business stuff, because we're under a lot of pressure. This is a small business, and we're making our way. And while we are we've come a long way. Mm-hmm. We're all supporting ourselves. We have a long way to go. We have pretty high aspirations, and so we're constantly pushing to do more and more and more. And sometimes we have disagreements on how to get there.
Like, for instance, when we started, I had no plan. I didn't have a business plan. I had a board and a few microphones. And I didn't have an engineer. I didn't have a website. I didn't have anything.
That is the hardest thing. I mean, you know this as well as I do, that when you work in radio, because I have a background in radio too, you've got a whole support team around you.
Ugh.
And then all of a sudden you get out and as a podcaster, and I got to say, engineers, which are unappreciated in radio, all of a sudden you get out here as a podcaster, and to have somebody there whose job is to make you sound good, you miss that.
Yeah, we do all the tech. I mean, we do listener events. You know, we do a lot ourselves. Legal, marketing, social media, everything. It's just the three of us.
But there's a lot of we have to find a way to work together. Like, I know that this show is not as good without Jay, and it's not as good without E.
And it's definitely not as good without Mike.
And
Mike's the lead.
But we all bring something different. And so where I can be very stuck in my ways from a radio background, surrounded by career radio guys.
Look at him pointing at me.
He's pointing at
I'm
Seth.
pointing at Seth, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, Mike, because like Seth has been surrounded by radio guys in big markets. You've been in New York, LA, Detroit. So and that's where I come from. But we've had to come together, and I've had to understand where Jay's coming from. Jay's had to we've both had to swallow pride and understand where the other guy's coming from, because I can be very set in something that I know to be right, and I'm not thinking of it from the angle of, here's a guy with a wife and kids to worry about, that I don't worry about that. It doesn't matter. And so I have to think differently and go, okay, well, where's he coming from with that? We got into a fight about this, but why was he so mad about that? Well, it's because he's worrying about different things. He's worrying about real life things that I'm just like, whatever, we'll figure it out when we get there.
See what happens.
We'll figure it out when we get there. Doesn't work to a guy that's got a wife and kids, you know?
The D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit's arts and entertainment scene.
Earlier this year, Piper Carter, the co-founder of We Found Hip Hop, joined us on the podcast, and she was producing an event to celebrate women in hip hop. And she brought with her Mahogany Jones, a local hip hop artist who's truly amazing. Here's our interview that we did with the two of them. Let's talk about who you are and what you do, starting with We Found Hip Hop. What is it and what's it all about?
So We Found Hip Hop is actually a social enterprise. It's called an L3C. And what that is basically a combination of a for-profit entity that has a social mission. And our mission is women in hip hop, and we produce events, we groom artists, we do artist development, we manage artists, and all of this is so that we can have better music, first of all, but so that we can give women a voice in the space of hip hop. It also includes dancers, graffiti artists, and anyone who would identify as a hip hop artist.
And tell me about the big event that's happening at the Charles Wright Museum, the Culture's Capital event.
Oh my God, this event is so exciting. Basically, as of the launch of our newly formed organization, we've been invited to the Charles H. Wright Museum to showcase our roster of artists. And we have an amazing live band that's going to be just super incredible. We've got poets, we have MCs, and we're showing a film that is a short about our work and what we've been doing here in the city with women in hip hop approximately over the last decade.
So for people who may not be familiar with the Detroit hip hop scene, I mean, talk to me about the women that we should know in the hip hop world here.
Oh my goodness! I'm gonna have to ask Mahogany Jones to join me because there's so many. The list is so long.
One is Mahogany Jones.
One is Mahogany Jones.
We put that top.
I just made an assumption everyone knows, but yeah, that's one. That's the number one you should know. Mahogany Jones.
Yeah. I think we need a whole entire show though to really list them out. And do I deliver or what?
You do deliver. Well, you put out a mixtape, right?
Yeah. So, well, in Detroit in general, I mean, Detroit has always had women in hip hop. There was Nikki D in the 80s and Boss in the 90s. And even now, right, we know about our Dej Loafs and our name brands that actually get radio play and this kind of thing. And around the country, actually, we have artists known as De-Essence. And even inside the Riot, Book Brown.
She'll be at the show.
She'll be at the show. And I mean, there's just a plethora of artists who have been here, have been making music, have been doing things. Ms. Corona, who is in 8 Mile. And these are art who also was a part of forming our initial organization. So there's just the list is so, and we have to tell the B girls too, right? Because we have Hardcore Detroit with B Girl Mama, and graffiti artists too, like Riku, DJs like Stacy J and Stacy Hotwax Hale and DJ Linda Carter, and so yeah, we just had to get that in there. It's a multi-element.
I mean, how has it changed over the years? I mean, you talked about the folks from back in the 80s and the 90s. What in what ways have things evolved or gotten different, and are there things that have stayed the same?
I think in general, because of media, spaces like this podcast here, it's a debrief, that there's more exposure. I do believe that women have always been participating in hip hop. They just haven't been showcased in the ways in which they're able to get themselves out there now. And so what that means is that more young girls will be able to see women and be able to say, hey, that's something that I could do.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Now, Mahogany, I know you're not just a recording artist, but you're doing a lot of other things as well. I mean, talk about some of the other stuff that you're doing in the hip-hop world.
Pretty much just, it's been great to work with We Found Hip Hop throughout the years. I used to be the host and assistant and like organizing. I work with Inside Out and Live in Arts and teaching arts classes and performance. I work with Dime and I teach hip-hop songwriting classes with them. I work with the union. And I actually am teaching my own curriculum, which is a self-esteem program for girls called Pure. And so that's just been pretty awesome. I'm a U.S. musical ambassador.
Yeah,
so.
what is that? What do you do?
It's fascinating.
I have a card. No,
You have a furry hat on?
Serious.
Did
You get Senate confirmation? What?
No, pretty much what happens is it's been happening since like the 70s, and it's people-to-people diplomacy. So our diplomats go to different countries, and, America doesn't have the best rep all the time in other countries. But what this does is that this humanizes Americans and allows other countries to engage. And it's different people, they'll send people to do sports and do different literacy programs. But in particular, music is one of those things that is a language that is a language of love. It's food and music. Food and music kind of just crosses all of the bridges. It creates a bridge. And so pretty much I go to different countries and perform, tour with my band, and I'll teach workshops and just engage with the people. And yeah, we walk away with an experience of like maybe some of the stereotypes we had in our head about these different countries, and normally it's third world countries that we're sent to, and they get to walk away with like, yeah, not all Americans are arrogant.
Did you have like a favorite moment or like an eye-opening moment on one of those trips?
Haiti.
I've been, the last trip I went to Pakistan. I've been to, I think being in Pakistan and being in Sudan, and I think just a lot of the perceptions that I've had were just altered and shifted, and just having lifelong friends. Like I still have friends that I connect with from Sudan, and we just still talk, and it's like a second home. So too many moments.
Wow.
See, I think I could do that.
What?
Be an ambassador?
Be a comedy ambassador?
Yeah, be a comedy ambassador.
You could.
He's a comedian over here. He's,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'll go over there.
Yeah.
You go?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to Nepal, so you got to come with me.
I'll go.
Oh, that sounds great.
Hold on, I need a coat.
I wonder though.
Bring an
Possibly.
Alwatom or something.
My guess is that music would translate, a little bit better than comedy over
That's
This is
true.
true.
international
This is
lines.
true.
I mean, do you run into other hip hop artists in your travels?
I think that is the thing that's awesome, and I think that's what's so great about, We Found Hip Hop and the idea of women in hip hop, because women are one of the most marginalized groups. Hip hop was a culture that was birthed out of being marginalized. And so culturally it translates well, because it's a culture that you have little resources and you make the most out of the little that you have to make sure that your voice is heard and that you're not erased. And so I think that that translates all across the board, and I think that's why hip hop is such a big culture. So that's the one thing that is awesome. We connect instantly. Of course they look at me as a woman and like, what are you going to teach us? And I start spitting. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. You should spit something.
Oh, you should. Yes.
Man.
Off the dome. People are
I think
always
we need
impressed
a
about
debrief,
that.
the debrief rap.
I think
Wait,
we do.
wait.
Yeah.
You want to see one right quick? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Say a word. A healthy word.
A healthy word. Cucumber.
Okay. All right. You say a word. Cucumber. What's your word? We'll come back to you.
Yes.
What's your word?
Does it need to be a noun? or
any word.
anything?
So you got cucumber.
Fabulous.
Fabulous.
Jokester.
Jokester. Okay, wait. Cucumber, fabulous, jokester.
Okay.
Cucumber, fabulous, jokester.
I said we
Cucumber,
oh so
fabulous,
fabulous,
jokester.
oh so extraordinary,
Cucumber,
far from the
fabulous,
ordinary. Till you said we do this, said I take the lime and the cucumber make my water alkaline. I tell you what I do in this moment is just so sublime. I'm chilling with these jokesters, we having so much fun. I said I do this and indeed I said we are not dumb. I said we do this and I spit this from the lungs from my the design up. It is oh so fine. I am just so inclined to be on the rise. Said we do this for women in hip hop. Said we just don't stop. Said we do this. This is like rock and roll. Do this right now from my soul. Lose control when we just frown silent at the debrief. I lost my word. It doesn't matter because it is still so sweet.
Look, she can keep going.
Nice.
She can keep going. That's off the dome.
This is the debrief.
All right, Mike, Becky, the three of us have all been binge listening to a podcast
Ooh,
recently.
yes. So good.
I mean, it's been riveting, right?
Yes, it has.
Very compelling.
This is a podcast called Shattered. It's a Black Friday podcast. It is a true crime podcast. So if you're a fan of like Serial, for example, or if you're a fan of S-Town or any of that CSI, true crime kind of stuff, I guess not CSI. I guess CSI is fiction, but
Right, but you're going to want to listen if
that kind of
that's your
stuff.
genre. Yeah.
Yeah, this is your genre. This is actually put out by a producer over at WDIV TV, and we have him here. And what's so fascinating about this is it's about a case that I think a lot of people here in the area are familiar. Like, this case. You remember this case being news, right?
Yeah, it happened shortly after I moved back here from Charlotte, North Carolina.
All right, well, let's welcome Jeremy Allen of WDIV. Jeremy, thanks for coming on the podcast and talking to us about this.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys, for having me.
And your voice is wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm no Mike Jeter, but
Well, not everyone can be.
Except for Mike Jeter.
Yeah.
Your role is behind the scenes, but you should be on the mic, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a TV station, so it doesn't really, lend itself to that kind of job typically. I mean, obviously, we're expanding here doing a podcast, but yeah.
Well, let's talk about the podcast and talk about the case for people who may not be familiar with us.
Yeah, so the case is about three young boys from a small town, Morenci, Michigan, and their father, the father and the mother, Tanya, they were going through a bit of a troubled spot in their relationship, and basically they were split up at the time. And just to give you the real quick once-over, John, the father, had the kids, the three boys, for the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, and he never got them back to the mom. And this set off a chain of events where FBI, state police, local police, everyone started to search for these boys, and they never found them. And still to this day, 7 years later, still no trace of the children. The father is in prison for unlawful imprisonment, and the mom is still heartbroken in Morenci. So right now, no answers, and the mom is talking as much as possible, trying to get the story out there. So that's why she's doing the podcast.
And explain in a little bit more detail why the father, John, is in prison, because he's not in prison.
Right, he's not in prison for murder because there's no proof, right? There's no proof of murder. No one knows. There's no bodies. They haven't been able to track down the location of where the children may have gone. The father did admit to doing something with the boys, and he's in prison right now for unlawful imprisonment, 3 counts of that. So he went to jail for 10 to 15 years. The earliest he could be out is 2020. If he serves the max time for those specific charges, it'd be 2025. And I would anticipate, based on what I've heard and what I hear constantly, actually, from the police, I would anticipate him staying in jail for at least the max. So,
wow.
But still, that's amazing. These kids just disappeared completely. And really, he seems to be the only one with the keys in it.
Yeah.
So it's really set up like a movie or a television show. It's this guy seems to be a mastermind, and in surface level, he's a truck driver from a small town. You wouldn't really peg him as the guy that's capable of doing something like this, but he sits there, and police will tell you that he kind of just knows he's pulling strings, and he's got all the answers inside of his head. And right now, police, FBI, no one knows where the kids are, where they could have gone.
It's just fascinating to me. I mean, this guy's like a Hannibal Lecter type, that intelligence. And, you're kind of like, okay, he's a truck driver. This should be easy, open and close type of thing. But, wow.
And what's weird to me is the reaction from his side of the family, like his parents and
right.
That is very bizarre.
Yeah. And you're going to hear more. I took a trip down to Jacksonville to talk with his parents because they've been, I don't want to say the missing link because there are several missing links, but one of the main keys has been getting the perspective of John's family. They've chosen to stay out of the limelight and away from the microphones because they feel like, for whatever reason, they feel like they've been taken advantage of. I know they did something with John Walsh in the past, and they feel like John Walsh did something to, I don't know if I could say screw them over, but that's kind of how they feel about it. But I talked to John's parents, and to me, without giving away too much information because no one's heard that episode yet, it feels like John's parents want to blindly believe their son because, as we all know, blood's thicker than water, and they don't want to believe that their son would do something, especially to their own grandchildren. So to me, it kind of feels like maybe they're just going to stick to their guns and believe what John says because that's what they want to do.
Wow. So talk about how you put this podcast together. I mean, first of all, how did you come into this project?
So, everyone's trying to push out products digitally now, right? So, I mean, obviously podcasts are big and it's a growing market. I've been listening to podcasts for a long time. I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to podcasts. And I feel like this story lends itself to it. I mean, I'm a father, so this story already, pulls a few heartstrings for me. So this story has been told, but it's never been told in depth like this. So this really is giving us the opportunity to kind of branch out and do, a deep dive into something that deserves it, because there are answers that are probably still out there where, we can maybe help get them. So
this has got to be a transition for you, though, because you've been with WDIV for a long time, but kind of in a different role, right?
Yeah. I've been producing television for about 17, 18 years now for DIV. So, yeah, I've been behind the scenes. I haven't been really heard or seen. So, yeah, this is a bit of a departure from that. But I think that, I don't know. I don't want to say this is where I'm going or where I'm headed. We'll see. But, yeah, it's definitely different than what I've been doing. That's for sure.
I mean, even the story, how layered and textured it is, because you could easily say, okay, this guy did something with these boys, and you have sympathy for the mother who has a pretty sordid past herself. So in listening, that's what drew me in. It's like, well, okay, yeah, naturally you're going to say this guy's the bad guy. But she kind of is a bad person as well, and that was my thing. Just listening to it, I'm just like, okay, you got to root for someone, and you root for the kids naturally,
absolutely.
But not knowing them fully in detail everything that the mother did, that was just I was just like, wow, how do you get through that? How do you build those shows up or those episodes up and dealing that and putting all that together without taking a side?
Yeah, so. So I'll pull back the curtain a little bit here. Something that nobody really knows is that we've been contacted by TV developers that were interested in doing a show. And so I guess the easiest way to kind of surmise my feelings about what you're asking about is they were trying to figure out, not casting, because it's not like you're trying to like put these people in certain spots, but you're trying to figure out who the hero is and who the villain is. And I had a tough time explaining to them that I couldn't definitively say that this was the pillar of ethics. This was the pillar. Right. It was really difficult to do that, and I think right now that deal kind of is crumbling because of that. Because there's no clear cut person walking through with a cape to save the day. There's not that person. So. Yeah, I mean, these are people. They're flawed people, all of them.
How do you walk that line? Because this is, on the one hand, it's kind of entertainment, but it's obviously a true story. There's obviously real people who have really suffered here.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely the difficult part that I didn't foresee before I started this process was what do you do? Because eventually it is a form of entertainment, but it's very real. There have been developments along the way where I do have two jobs. I have a job as a TV producer at Channel 4 at WDIV, and I have this job as a podcaster now. And new information comes through, and I have to call Tanya, the mom, to try to verify or get a response from her on something. And knowing full well that I'm serving two purposes. One, well, it's really three because I know her now as a person, as a human being. One is to find out how she's doing, how she's processing this information. As a friend, I don't know if I can say that really, but I mean, as a human being. The other one is my job is to find out how she's feeling. And then the third one is, I need to also put this in my podcast. So it's a very weird feeling.
Right.
It's trying to really like balance all of that and still kind of feel like a good person through it all. You know?
I was thinking, listening to it, this must kind of keep you up at night. Some of these moments.
Absolutely. There are definitely moments.
What is the process? Do you go out and get all the audio, I guess footage? What do you call the audio? The source material,
Sure.
and then sit down and divide it up, or are you still gathering source material even as the podcast is being released?
Even now, as the podcast is being released, I mean, I think I try to, and this sounds really, I don't know, it sounds kind of gross to say it, but I try to do it as organically as possible. You know what I mean? Because it's a very fluid situation still, even though there hasn't been like a clear-cut answer. We don't have any clues leading us to where the boys are. It's still, there's information coming in. So I don't want to say that I'm done with source material because I don't know. I know that there's a couple things I'd still like to get done before we roll out the rest of the episodes. But it's the process is find the bullet points, the big key moments, and then kind of build from there. And then wherever one interview takes you, if it takes you to somebody else, and you just kind of follow the path.
I mean, I kind of imagine that when you say find those big bullet points, you're talking about almost the cliffhanger moments. Like I know there's you don't get into Tanya's backstory, and Mike sort of alluded to.
She would correct you and say Tanya, but yes.
I'm sorry, Tanya.
Right.
Her, I mean, she's got a sordid past, and you don't get into that in the first episode. You sort of get into it in the, in the second episode, and so do you look for those places to?
Yeah, I don't think that I did that. I don't think I was predetermining for entertainment purposes. It just kind of, that's the way it felt like it needed to be told, was here are the big moments from episode 1 is, here's the whole thing in a nutshell. Kids are missing, dad took the kids somewhere, he's in jail, mom had the kids, mom's heartbroken. And then as we start to get into mom a little bit more, well then, you have to find out that the dad's entire motivation, at least what he's telling people, was that he was trying to keep his kids safe from a mother that was sexually abusive to them.
Right.
Now, I can't verify that that's true. Right. I haven't been able to. Police to this day will tell me that they can't find anything to verify that. John's family, on the other hand, they'll tell me something completely different. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Is there stuff in here, because I noticed that you've got, for example, the DIV archives that you can go through and pull some stuff from. What do you think are the things that are in this podcast for the first time that are the biggest new things that people didn't know about this case before?
Well, I think that hearing a lot of the stories, I mean, again, the nuts and bolts of it, the main parts of the story people know. It's the texture of personalities and getting to know a little bit more about Tanya. And it's, I mean, here are a few things that I know weren't done. We went into Amish country. That's an episode that's out right now. And nobody went into, I mean, like the police went to talk to the Amish people, but nobody has gone into an Amish community, been invited to an Amish home, and had the discussion about what it would be like to bring 3 modern children into your home to take care of them as an Amish person. So there are definitely a lot of experiences, and there's an episode coming out, episode 8, which will be me going down to Jacksonville to talk to John's family, and that hasn't been done. They've only spoken once or twice to the media in total over 7 years. So I sat down with them in a, for the lack of a better word, a junkyard for about 3 hours and had a discussion. Well, junkyard, not dogs, junkyard cats, just darted in between cars.
That's pure Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Pure
There you go. Yeah. Not to be disparaging to Jacksonville, but yes.
So there you have it. That's a few of our favorite episodes from earlier this year. On behalf of Mike and Becky and myself, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoy this show, this podcast that's about the Detroit arts and entertainment scene, there are a couple of ways that you can support the show. First of all, wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Spotify, you can subscribe to the show and you can leave a review. That helps other people find the show. The other thing you can do, of course, is let somebody know. Tell a friend. Share it on social media. Please help us spread the word. If you think that there are other people out there who might also enjoy this podcast, do us a favor and tell them about it. We think they'd enjoy it too. We'll be back with new episodes soon, but in the meantime, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it.
The D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit's arts and entertainment scene.